Just before we get to the video that you actually came here to watch, let me tell you about a new channel that I'm running called Decoding the Unknown. It's a show where I take a long, deep dive into some of the world's biggest mysteries, from what happened to the Roanoke colonists to the regular guy who found a listening device in his power strip. It's absolutely terrifying, and it's always a bit of a wild ride. You can find a link below. I hope to see you over there. More than 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by oceans. More than 80% of those waters remain unexplored. The depths of the ocean are home to all sorts of marine life that we know very little about. Roughly 150 new species are classified each year, and with so much of the ocean remaining a mystery, it's no wonder that the whereabouts of these sunken treasures are mysteries as well. While there are at least 118 Egyptian pyramids, none are more famous than the Great Pyramids at Giza. The largest pyramid was built to house Pharaoh Khufu, the middle for Pharaoh Khafra, and the smallest for Pharaoh Menkaure. In 1837, English Army officer Richard William Howard Vyse began excavating the pyramid of Menkaure. As an army officer, Vyse did not know much about archaeology or Egyptology, but he did know about explosives. It was a less than ideal proposition, to say the least. But with Vyse's destructive techniques, he was able to find himself directly inside of Menkaure's burial chamber. Inside the chamber was an 8-foot stone sarcophagus. It did not have any hieroglyphs, though it was decorated in the style of a palace facade. It was the first time that a piece of this nature had been found. The sarcophagus was loaded onto the merchant ship Beatrice, which set sail for England. A second ship carrying other Egyptian antiquities was sent as well, but only one would arrive to deliver its goods to the British Museum in London. On October the 13th, 1838, after leaving port in Malta, Beatrice was lost. All that's known is that the ship sank, but its whereabouts are unclear despite considerable effort by many to find it. It's not just the sarcophagus either. No sooner had word got out of the Beatrice sinking than wild rumors began to spread, telling of the vast riches held on the vessel. The exact contents are unknown, but the official story is that in addition to the sarcophagus, there should be 200 boxes filled with pink granite and gold coins. This certainly makes it an exciting treasure to search for, not only for its historical significance, but for monetary gain as well. Should the Beatrice be discovered, however, it's unclear what would happen to the sarcophagus of Menkaure. The sarcophagus was aboard an English vessel, but it is most commonly believed to have sunk in Spanish waters. There's also the small matter of illegal grave robbing. While most of the items being sent to the British Museum are being sent with proper authorization, the sarcophagus was not included on the list of items to be sent to England or the list of items to remain in Egypt. The battle that would ensue over ownership rights would likely be a legal and diplomatic nightmare, so it's best if whoever finds this lost treasure just pockets whatever gold coins they can and leave the rest for the bureaucrats to decide. Hashtag not legal advice. The Flor de la Mar, or Flower of the Sea, was constructed in Lisbon, Portugal in 1502. The Flor de la Mar was a carrack, large ships with 3 to 4 masts that were built for the Portuguese Indian run. It was the largest ship constructed at the time, but was part of an ill-advised policy of ever-increasing size for ships partaking in the Indian run. The Flor de Mar weighed in at 400 tons. From the beginning, this massive ship had big problems. The maiden voyage to India in 1502 went as planned, but the return trip was met with complications. The massive size and weight of the ship, now loaded down with Indian spices, made it difficult to maneuver, particularly through the Mozambique Channel. Leaks began to spring up throughout the ship, and it was forced to dock in Mozambique for 2 months for repairs. In March of 1505, the Flor de la Mar would make its second voyage to India. Once again, problems arose, and the ship had to stop in Mozambique for repairs. This time, it would take much longer, with the ship stranded for 10 months. The frustrated captain, Nova, would repeatedly try to begin the voyage back to Portugal, only to have to return to Mozambique to continue repairs. In February of 1507, commander of the 8th India Armada, Tristão da Cunha, would come across the ship, still stuck in Mozambique. Cunha ordered his men to remove the spices from the Flor de la Mar and load them onto other vessels that were set to return to Portugal. He also commanded his men to get the ship seaworthy once more so that it could accompany the Armada. Captain Nova and the Flor de la Mar participated in Cunha's conquest of Socotra, but much to Nova's surprise, he was ordered to remain in the Arabian Sea as part of a patrol squadron headed by Alfonso de Albuquerque. It continued to take part in multiple conquests through 1511. In many regards, this made the ship remarkable in terms of quality. The average average Portuguese carrack was only designed to be used for 3 to 4 years, but the Flor de la Mar had been in use for nearly a decade. In 1511, it took part in the conquest of Malacca, the largest commercial center in the East Indies. After the conquest, Albuquerque made what could only be described as a baffling decision to use the ship to transport the entirety of the treasure looted from the Sultan of Malacca's palace back to Portugal, despite having an armada at his disposal. The ship clearly had problems when fully encumbered, and the story's end is, well, it's predictable. The Flor de la Mar sank during a storm on November 20th, 1511 off Timor Point in the Kingdom of Aru, Sumatra. The ship with the Sultan's treasure remains somewhere undiscovered on the ocean floor. To whoever finds it, the Sultan's treasure is estimated to be worth $2.6 billion in today's money. The Merchant Royal was an English merchant ship built at the Royal Naval Dockyard in Deptford. The ship first launched in 1627 under the command of Captain John Limbury. During this time, England and Spain were constantly alternating between peace and war with one another. But during times of peace, Captain Limbury took advantage of the lucrative trading opportunities. From 1637 to 1640, Limbury took the Merchant Royal and its sister ship, the Dover Merchant, to the New World to trade with the Spanish colonies. Once his ship was filled to the brim with treasure, well, he'd head back to England. The journey was a long one, and the Merchant Royal was leaking badly by the time it crossed the Atlantic. Captain Limbury opted to take a pit stop at the port city of Cadiz in Spain. While he was there, a Spanish ship caught fire just before it was set to take off. The ship was loaded with treasure to be converted to currency as payment to Spain's 30,000 troops stationed in Flanders. Ever the opportunist, Limbury saw this as a chance to make a little extra money and offered to carry the Spanish treasure to Antwerp on his way home. Given that the Merchant Royal was already having difficulties before adding this extra weight, this was a poor decision with yet another predictable outcome. When the Merchant Royal and its sister ship left Cadiz, it was still leaking. On September 23rd, 1641, the pumps used to eject flooding water broke down and the ship sank off Land's End. 18 men drowned with the ship, but Captain Limbury and 40 of his men were able to use lifeboats to escape and board the Dover Merchant. The treasure that sank inside the Merchant Royal is considered by most to be the most valuable sunken treasure in the world, and as such, there have been countless endeavors to find it. In 2007, the Odyssey Marine Exploration Company, who had been searching for years, recovered an estimated $500 million worth of gold and silver coins from a shipwreck. Initial rumors from the press were of the assumption that they'd found the Merchant Royal at long last, but the Odyssey team believes that the shipwreck they found was the Spanish Nuestra Señora de la Mercedes, a vessel that sank in 1804. So, what exactly does it take to become the most valuable sunken treasure of all time? On board the Merchant Royal, there was over 100,000 pounds of gold. Assuming the measurements are in the 12-ounce troy pounds commonly used for gold, that alone would be worth over $2.4 billion today. There are also 400 bars of Mexican silver and nearly 500,000 pieces of 8 Spanish minted currency made out of silver. The fossilized remains of the Peking man were first discovered in 1921 in the Zhoukoudian cave in northern China. The bones were classified as Homo erectus pekinus, a subspecies of Homo erectus. This discovery was instrumental in the foundation of Chinese anthropology, and the Zhoukoudian has become the most productive site of Homo erectus fossils in the world. Peking man is the oldest known specimen of Homo erectus found in Asia, dating back at least 400,000 years to the Middle Pleistocene era. It is unknown whether the plethora of bones found in the cave are because Peking man lived there, died there, or was carried there by giant hyenas after being killed. Over 100,000 pieces of stone tools have also been discovered there, making the latter the least likely. With these fossils found, a dialogue was finally opened between Western and Eastern science on important anthropological matters. With Peking man classified as a direct human ancestor, it was considered strong evidence for the out-of-Asia hypothesis that humans evolved in Asia. This was more than just a scientific discovery, however. Peking man had a major cultural impact in Asia. China had deep-rooted superstitions and creation myths, but following the Chinese Communist Revolution, Peking man was propagandized to introduce the peasant class to Marxism and science. This would ultimately lead to misguided theories about primitive forms of communism that recreated the divide between Western and Eastern science once again. The schism was exacerbated by Western scientists adopting the out-of-Africa hypothesis. In 1941, to ensure that the specimens were not destroyed during the Second Sino-Japanese War, the collection of fossils of 40 different individuals were placed into 2 wooden footlockers and turned over to the United States Marine Corps by the Peking Union Medical College. The Marine Corps was to provide the safe transport of these specimens to the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. The fossils were stored aboard the SS President Harrison, but the ship was attacked by Japanese warships and run aground. No one has seen any of the Peking Man fossils since that day. There are numerous theories about the ultimate fate of these fossils. The most common and probable theories, and the reason we're talking about it today, are that the bones were either taken aboard the Japanese ship Awamaru, which sank, or they were moved to another American vessel that also sank. Other theories include that they were buried next to a stone barracks in Qinghuandao and have since been covered by a parking lot, or the rather ignorant theory that they've been ground up for traditional Chinese medicine. Numerous attempts have been made to locate the 2 footlockers containing these skeletal remains, and large cash rewards have been offered. Their fate remains unknown, and they're most likely somewhere at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. King Dharmazedi was the 16th king of the Hanthawaddy Kingdom in what is now Myanmar. On the 5th of February 1484, he ordered the casting of a great bell. The greatest bell, in fact, at 294 tons. It is believed it's the largest bell that's ever been constructed. It was cast out of gold, silver, copper, and tin. The Bell of Good Luck in China has held the record of the largest bell since it was cast in 2000, but it's a mere 116 tons, less than half the weight of Dharmazedi's. The bell was not a matter of ego like the Great Pyramids or other enormous overcompensatory structures created by mankind. Dharmazedi was a devout Buddhist, and the bell was cast to be presented as a gift to the Shwedagon Pagoda, Myanmar's most sacred shrine. In the early 1500s, European explorers began making contacts in Lower Burma. The Portuguese warlord and mercenary named Felipe de Brito and Nkote arrived in Lower Burma sometime in the 1590s. After sacking several cities, the king of Arakan appointed de Brito as governor of Sirium, a major port city, in 1599. Ever the greedy mercenary, de Brito continued to expand his reach, and in 1603 declared independence from the Arakanese king and established Portuguese rule under the viceroy of Portuguese India. In 1608, de Brito removed the great bell of Dharmazedi from the Shwedagon Pagoda. His plan was to bring it back to Sirium to melt it down and turn it into cannons, a needlessly complicated plan. The bell was rolled downhill and placed onto a raft, and it was then hauled by elephants to the Bago River. The raft was then tethered to de Brito's ship to be towed the rest of the way to Sirium. Peace and non-violence are central beliefs in Buddhism. Violence destroys inner peace, and without inner peace, one cannot reach enlightenment. Perhaps the great bell of Dharmazedi sensed de Brito's intentions, and the scared Buddhist bell did not wish to be turned into weapons of war. Or perhaps the confluence of the Bago and Yangon rivers was too turbulent and the bell too heavy. Either way, the raft broke apart and the bell sank to the bottom, pulling de Brito's ship along with it. De Brito did escape the ship, but he was executed in 1613 after Burmese forces recaptured Sirium. Despite the seemingly precise location of the bell's sinking, no sign of it has ever been found. Many people have searched, and one professional diver called James Blunt has made over 115 exploratory dives using sonar imaging for guidance. There are several factors complicating the process. The water is extremely muddy, making visibility poor, and there are at least 3 other shipwrecks in the area. And between the massive weight of the bell and the 400 years it spent at the bottom of the river, it's believed that the bell could be covered in as much as 25 feet of mud. Retired Myanmar Navy officer San Lin launched a mission in 2014 claiming that the bell had been found and salvaging efforts were being prepared. The claims turned out to be false, with many saying that Lin should be charged with fraud, describing the incident as a national shenanigan. Unfortunately for de Brito, English poet John Donne would not publish his famous Meditation 17 until 10 years after de Brito's execution. Had the poem been written earlier, perhaps de Brito would have known never to send for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee, and left the great bell of Dharmazedi well enough alone. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd recommend checking out another video we've done, Lost with the Titanic, 5 treasures that sank with the ship. You can see why I'd recommend that one. It's linked on the screen now, and thank you for watching.